Hello, government students. This is Mrs. Politsky, and I have notes for Chapter 9, Section 2, Head of State and Chief Executive. So, what we have been talking about is a little bit about the roles of our president. And our president wears a lot of different hats. For the most part, he's the head of state, he's a chief executive, he's the commander in chief, he's also the chief diplomat, he's a legislative leader, economic planner, and a party leader. And so, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about each one of these in a little bit more detail as we go along. So, we're going to go ahead and flip our screen here and talk about these roles. When we talk about head of state, the president, for the most part, represents the entire nation and performs ceremonial roles. So, whenever there is like a leader of another nation. Our president is usually the face of our nation, and he will, for the most part, greet that person. Or if there would happen to be, let's say, a leader of the world that would pass away, our president might go to that funeral and represent our entire nation. As chief executive, our president gets to influence the way the laws are implemented. So if a president, depending on their political party, doesn't like a law that's on the books, and maybe they'd like to see that change, they might not necessarily execute the law as much as maybe a president of a different political party. Commander in chief, we mentioned before that our president, for the most part, is kind of the leader of our military, but they do share a power, okay, with Congress, and that is the power to declare war. A president can ask for a declaration of war, but a president doesn't declare war. That is the power of Congress. If you go back and you look at your Constitution, Congress has that power. But typically, Congress isn't going to declare war on anyone unless the president asks for it. A president can use military action, and sometimes they don't need permission of Congress to make that happen, but they can deploy troops overseas to help, maybe in a natural disaster kind of crisis, but they might also send troops to kind of help shore up security. Okay, they, for the most part, can make those decisions on their own. That might mean using special forces and things like that. Our president is also the chief diplomat. They direct our foreign policy. Some presidents have very differing views on that, and that might vary from one president to the next, and definitely varies from political party. The chief legislator, our president, for the most part, can present Congress their legislative program, what they consider to be the important issues, and they can also suggest the budget for that. And occasionally, a president might say, "We don't have the money for something that maybe Congress wants," so they can use that influence. Economic planner, our president, for the most part, prepares an economic report for Congress and is responsible for promoting things like high employment, production, and purchases. And then finally, our president is a party leader. Whatever their political party is, Republican or Democrat, they get to select national chairperson. Okay, or then they also give speeches for their political party, and probably more importantly, they raise money for their political party. Normally, if a president is asked to go and speak for their political party, that usually brings in thousands, if not millions of dollars from donors. They also get to plan the political strategy for their political parties. So certainly that is a very influential role in this day and age. As far as being head of state and chief executive, some duties here. As head of state, our president performs ceremonial functions. He also, we can move this. We'll try again. They can comfort citizens in times of crisis. So when I think about like 9/11, President Bush, for the most part, was a reassuring presence for our nation at that time. Our president can host dignitaries from foreign countries. And finally, our president gives awards to distinguished citizens. As chief executive, our president carries out the laws of the land. He appoints cabinet members and other agency heads. Our president also appoints federal judges and Supreme Court justices, but granted, they've got to get permission and go through a set of hearings by our U.S. Senate. And then finally, our president grants reprieves, pardons, and amnesty to people who have been convicted of federal offenses. So it could mean that you could, for somebody who's committed a federal crime, a president could get them off the hook. Okay. A lot of presidents use this very sparingly because they don't want it to come back to haunt them if they're running for reelection. But if a president is on their way out, meaning that they're a lame duck, this is something a lot of presidents use before they leave the White House. Thank you very much.